This week, Riley Gaines visits the panel in person and brings down the house in front of a packed auditorium. Details straight ahead. The debate over the opening ceremonies at the Olympic Summer Games. Was it art or making a mockery of Christianity? And new details on what might have motivated Donald Trump's attempted assassination. These stories and plenty more on deck this week with The Lion Week in Review. Welcome into this week's edition of The Lion Week in Review. It's a weekly look at the culture, the courts, your state capitol, and your kids. I'm Chris Stigall. Now, let's meet our panel, some of the men and women behind the stories at readlion.com. Josh Mann is our managing editor, Michael Ryan, our executive editor, and Valerie Cabana is media contributor here at The Lion. Welcome, panel.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we get started this week with a visitor to Team Herzog headquarters and the Lion headquarters. The Lion spent some time. Valerie, you guys spent some time with Riley Gaines on a recent visit. Talk to us about it.
Yes. I mean, just getting to know Riley a little bit on a more personal level, she's an incredible human. I am so thankful for that opportunity. But then she brought the house down when she spoke with just under 300 people about keeping men out of women's sports. And y'all, this is an important topic to talk about.
I was amazed when she walked into the room. I mean, Chris hosted this event and announces her name. She comes up and everybody, I mean, all at once, stands to their feet in applause. And what struck me, I've seen a lot of standing ovations, but few that happen as quickly and as enthusiastically as that one before she'd even said a word, because I think there's just this immense respect that this young woman now has really sacrificially dedicated herself to a simple but important message that is going against the cultural grain.
Yeah, just for the record, I was the first person in the audience to stand. I want that known for the record. It was an hour long or a little bit more. I couldn't get enough. And I guarantee you, if you see this interview that Chris Stigall did, it's a great letdown for him to talk to us now. You're going to not get enough either. She said, I'm saying that there are two sexes and that you can't change your sex, and that each sex is deserving of equal opportunity, privacy, and safety. Isn't it amazing how that's swimming against the current today? You know, she is a heroine, no matter what she thinks, and says that it's just common sense. It is common sense, but common sense is courageous today. And I was just absolutely horrified at her tale of being pinned down by a mob, an angry mob at San Francisco State University after an event, and held for several hours, assaulted for several hours, and the media never tell this side of the story, do they?
Yeah, and once she got out after midnight, out of that building, she was left on her own. She had to go find a place to stay.
Well,
she missed her flight.
Cops got her out to the parking lot, and
that was it.
You know, Valerie, one of the things that I found fascinating about that story that the guys mentioned is I asked her very specifically about her husband. And did she feel like she wanted to continue this? Did her husband like the idea of her continuing to do this? And she basically said, tough, I'm going to continue to do it. She's brave.
Yeah, she absolutely is. And we got to have a little bit of time before, and I asked her about that too, and wondering, how has this affected your life and your marriage? Because she was recently married as soon as all of this started happening, and she just assured me that her husband is the constant in her life, and he is her biggest supporter. But it is scary when you are walking through this type of persecution in today's time, and you're really just standing up for a good cause.
What's the over-under panel? I'll ask you quickly. Josh Mann, is this going to be a significant issue? I asked her, do you think women will turn on this issue in the election this fall? She felt maybe that would be the case. What's your sense of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't feel like I've got a great sense of it. I do think common sense is kind of prevailing, and I think parents particularly will agree with basically the common sense view of gender.
Valerie, you have a thought on it? As a woman?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I think we're going in the completely opposite direction of the direction that we should be going in. But I think people are starting to see what's actually happening, and a lot of awareness is being brought to it because of people like Riley who are standing up.
Let's pivot to a story, really an opinion article that Michael Ryan wrote. Brilliant column, and it's gotten a lot of traction online already. If you haven't seen it at readline.com. Beyond Paris Olympics, even in the largely Christian West, persecution comes with the territory, Michael Ryan. Strong stuff. Tell us about your thoughts.
Well, Chris, checks in the mail for that intro. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, I just kind of used the infamous Paris Olympics opening ceremony, mocking Christianity as a springboard of sorts. Thank you, Josh, for that. To talk about Christian persecution, and I went into one of my favorite books. It's called "When Faith is Forbidden: 40 Days on the Front Lines with Persecuted Christians" by Todd Nettleton of The Voice of the Martyrs. Just an amazing book about all of these Christians around the world who are persecuted much more than Americans are persecuted for their faith. They're put in prison, they're beaten, they're assaulted, their homes are destroyed, they're even killed for their faith. It's one of the most underreported stories in the world, I think.
What about people that say, Josh, that this is not at all the Last Supper that was being mocked? This is some sort of, I forget what they said, the Feast of Dionysus. You've heard that a few times, even though I think the Olympic Committee has even said that is, in fact, what they were doing, was talking about the Last Supper. You've heard that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've heard that. Here's what I think. I think both are true, actually. The art director says it was Dionysius. There is a moment where I do think there's an allusion to Dionysius. However, there's a different moment and a camera angle that makes it clear to me that this is that they're playing on the Da Vinci painting of the Last Supper. Even the poses of the drag queens, this kind of halo around the head of the messianic figure in the middle is a clear reference to Jesus. So I think it was a clear allusion to that, and I think it's a little bit of a trick or a play for the art director to say, oh, it was Dionysius. I think both happened, and I think they're maybe trying to escape some of the backlash.
Well, in fact, Valerie, the woman in the kind of the center of this whole shoot, the woman that I guess was portraying the whatever figure in the center of it, she wrote that this is the New Gay Testament. She said that on our own social media, so it's pretty clear it was a shot at Christians.
Yeah, and honestly, that's just hateful. We're going one way, we're going another way, and why are you in turn persecuting when you are looking for acceptance? You're kind of being a hypocrite of the whole movement that you've been fighting for. But as Christians, we should have known that this was coming, and we know that it's going to get worse. We see, like Michael mentioned, the persecution that's happening all over the country and in places where you will die if you were a Christian. And we look back to Jesus. Jesus was persecuted way worse than any of us ever have been by dying on a cross for us. And so when we look at today's persecution, we know that it's going to continue to get worse as a Christian until Jesus comes back.
Josh Mann at readlion.com, a story about the potential VP pick, Josh Shapiro. He's the governor of Pennsylvania. A lot of people are looking at him as a potential VP pick. But getting to the governor's office, Josh, you have covered this story. There's some question about the funds that got him there.
Yeah, Governor Shapiro, you might remember, he came out in support of school choice. And then suddenly, when the rubber hit the road, it seemed all of a sudden that he was going to veto it. He wasn't in favor of it. Well, the Freedom Foundation, who is a union watchdog group, they have suggested that there might be a reason why that happened. Actually, the Pennsylvania Teachers Union donated funds to the Shapiro campaign, but not directly, indirectly. They used general funds that they moved into another account within their organization and then sent it to basically a Democrat group that supports Democratic governors' campaigns. And so by the time the money reaches the Shapiro campaign, it didn't really look at all like it was from the teacher union's general fund. Well, in Pennsylvania, that is illegal. The Freedom Foundation argues, and they even say that an indirect contribution, if you move the money from one pot to another and then donate it, that's still wrong. So that's the Freedom Foundation's perspective, and they say that adds some needed context to Shapiro's change of heart.
You know, Michael Ryan, it is one of those things that a lot of people don't know campaign finance law, so it's hard to really understand it. Even at the presidential level, people are questioning whether Kamala Harris can just inherit Joe Biden's pot of money. So could this be an issue, you think, if Shapiro's in fact her pick?
Well, absolutely, it's an issue. It's wash, rinse, and repeat. It sounds like money laundering, and it's echoes the concerns that a lot of people have about this Act Blue PAC that has allegedly been making campaign donations from people that don't know they're making the donations. It's absolutely legitimate to ask whether the governor's decision to flip on school choice was because of this money. It's government money to partisan candidates, which is a real slippery slope.
One of the exclusives at ReadLion.com in just the last week continues to center around this ever-evolving and very murky story about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, not but half a month ago. More details about it in these hearings on Capitol Hill, things that we don't know, questions that still need to be asked. Josh Mann, you dug into this a little more.
Yeah, it's incredible. When you look at what FBI and Secret Service officials have been telling Congress, they really don't seem to have many details, and they don't know the motive. Well, one thing that came out of FBI Director Christopher Wray's testimony, and this was last week, is that somewhere around July 6th, he said, Crooks, the shooter who nearly assassinated Donald Trump, became very focused on President Trump. In fact, that day he registered for the Trump rally. And so I just thought, I wonder what was happening in and around his town that weekend. And lo and behold, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, was stumping for Joe Biden 2.2 miles from Crook's house. The day before, according to Wray, he sort of snaps. And there was local news coverage. Wray also said that this 20-year-old was looking at news articles about political figures. He registers for the Trump rally. And so I simply think this is an important fact that should be considered. And when, 17 or 18 days now after this event, we still don't have a motive, maybe we should at least consider the fact that this governor from California, who was probably the most high-profile surrogate for the Biden campaign, was standing in front of red Stop Trump signs using incendiary rhetoric about the important light and dark. He was using apocalyptic language in the kid's backyard, 2 miles from his house. I think it's an important fact. In fact, Michael asked Senator Hawley about this, and Senator Hawley said it was the first he'd heard of it, but it should be part of this investigation.
When there are no answers, Michael, there's none. We have had no real substantive answers as to who this guy is or why he did it. And as they continue to sort of evade those answers, people naturally start to fill in the blanks.
Yeah, and I think it was brilliant of my colleague Josh to ask the question, what was going on in the area around the time that this kid sort of focused on Trump, and to find out that there was this campaign event for Biden headed by Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, just a couple miles from this kid's home, was very interesting to us. And, the things he said were the stuff you're seeing in the media elsewhere, that Trump is a threat to democracy, he's an existential threat. They had Trump dolled up as Adolf Hitler in a left-wing magazine on the cover. But, left-wing rhetoric has never been a problem, even though, I remember when Gabby Giffords was shot in Arizona, Democrats and the left tried to blame Sarah Palin for putting bullseyes on political maps for electoral purposes, which is, everybody has done that. And conservative rhetoric in general, but again, liberal rhetoric is never a problem. I'm just wondering, Josh, you can do so much with geo-tracking of cell phones and so forth these days. Is it possible for somebody to determine whether Crooks went to this event that Gavin Newsom spoke at?
Possibly. In fact, the Oversight Project by the Heritage Foundation has done some device ID tracking, including devices that have been in the Crooks' home. So you can do a device. You can't always link those to people. And we did reach out to the Oversight Project and unfortunately haven't heard back yet, because they could definitively say whether any device data that they have would confirm that crooks or somebody associated with that household might have been at this event. Which
either way, he would have consumed news about it, right?
That's correct. Right.
Valerie, this issue, much like the women's sports issue we were just discussing, I wonder, is this something that people will be considering as they head to the ballot box this fall? Is this relevant? Is this important? Does this change people's view of Donald Trump at all or not?
I absolutely hope so. As far as the assassination attempt, I think we have seen him step up and be brave. I know I couldn't do that. But with this, I don't think that it's a coincidence. And with the left, they are fear-mongering, and the people are believing it. They're saying, hey, if a Republican takes office, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and you don't want that, so make sure you vote Democrat.
Let's turn to something that apparently there's not much difficulty in coming to a consensus on, guys, and that's American flags ought to be American. Michael Ryan, I don't know, symbolic? Do you like it? That's the new law that apparently is going to make its way to Biden's desk. If you're going to fly an American flag above federal property, it's got to be made here. What do you say?
Oh, I think Congress went a whole lot haywire on this one, Chris. It did take months to get it to the floor of the House. It took 40 minutes to debate, and as far as I can determine, it was signed, but it's been very quiet in terms of there's no big bill signing by the president that I could determine. But I do love it. It's a great symbolic victory. But I'd like us now in Congress to maybe pivot to some substance, such as manufacturing medicines here, toys, baby food, batteries, computer chips. I did a quick check, and I found that other products apparently made abroad include American Girl dolls, smartphones, baseballs, and radio flyer wagons, which I was absolutely horrified to find out.
Josh Mann, American made. Do you go further than just the flag?
I think it's a good idea. I like Michael's idea, and that's unfortunate to hear about radio flyer and baseballs, frankly.
Yeah.
And I think that it makes sense, and we're seeing a lot of worry about what artificial intelligence is going to do to jobs. We've already sent manufacturing overseas years ago, and I think there's a large and a growing majority of Americans who say, wait a minute, let's make things here, and especially our own flag. I mean, I just try to imagine these factories overseas pumping out all of this American stuff. I hope it's a good influence on them.
Valerie, over at readline.com, another great story about what Europe is doing. We always seem to be kind of following Europe's lead on this issue of gender transitioning. They made it a thing well over a decade ago. They issued puberty blockers and things like that. Now the UK and other European countries are saying, no, we're going to peel back on that and, in fact, make it illegal. That's one of the stories today at readline.com. What do you know?
As it should be. This is great to say that we're making puberty blockers illegal. And, kids, they can't make that decision for themselves. They can't decide, oh, I want to be a boy, but I'm a girl. That's not how it works. There's got to be some sort of indoctrination happening from the parents. And any parent that would allow their minor child to receive puberty blockers should be in jail. It's pretty simple.
Josh, you lived in the UK for a while. I'm always kind of marveling at the fact that the UK seems to lead on social issues like this, and then it seems the United States so often follows. And now that the UK has officially said, we tried this experiment, it doesn't work, we're making it illegal, it's something many Americans are just now beginning to embrace.
Yeah, and the UK is not the only European nation to hit the brakes on this, and so I do hope that, American lawmakers, regulatory folks, the medical establishment is watching. And what's remarkable about this is that the puberty blocker ban came in a conservative government, and now the Labor Party is in power, and yet you're still seeing a defense, even by their health secretary equivalent, of who is liberal, of no, this is right. We need to get the evidence right, and basically what's happened is they've had a big review called the Cass Review that said, a lot of these medical decisions are being made with little to no long-term studies or evidence. And so let's get back to evidence-based medicine. Thank
And
you
Michael,
very much.
the horror stories of people who have detransitioned, Michael, I mean, there's ample evidence out there. The UK is now outlawing it. How long is it going to take before the United States starts to adopt critical thinking?
Well, that's a good question. I think Elon Musk helped the cause quite a bit by coming out and giving testimony about his own personal story where one of his sons transitioned to female, and it broke his heart. And so much so that it moved a famous detransitioner, Chloe Cole, to record a video to Elon on X, and it's linked in a story that we ran about Elon Musk's story. And I would just say for anybody on the fence about whether to provide these kinds of sex change treatments to children, if you're on the fence about that, watch that video by Chloe Cole, and it's very moving.
Well, before we wrap up, we always like to ask the panel about their favorite articles of the week. And Valerie, we start with you. What do you like at readlion.com this week?
Of course, I'm going to go with the Riley Gaines article that we did. It was so awesome having her here in Smithville, Missouri, and just getting to hear her advocacy and the difference that she is making and the impact that she is having nationwide.
Michael Ryan.
Yeah, it's the story that I talked about just a minute ago about Elon Musk. Fight against the woke mind virus is personal for Elon Musk. And again, Chloe Cole's video linked in that article is very powerful.
And Josh, your favorite this week?
We've got a couple stories about Christian education, Christian schools that are growing, but also this Christian ag teacher, Brooke Stewart, who won a major Christian Teacher of the Year award last year, has won a Texas-wide Ag Teacher Award. And just seeing the innovation that's happening in Christian education is inspiring.
Panel, thank you. That'll do it for this week's edition of the Lion Week in Review. Be sure to keep up on all the latest news every day at readlion.com. For all of us here at the Lion, thanks for downloading the show, and we'll see you next time.